Ricken Financial presents Kickin' with the Rickens, Redefining Retirement. Gerry Ricken and Heidi Ricken Provost want to help you reach the retirement you deserve. Let's build a strategy that gives you the confidence while meeting your financial wants and needs. Meet the team at rickenfinancial.com. Now, Kickin' with the Rickens.
Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for downloading. Thanks for listening to Kickin' with the Rickens podcast. We are here with retirement planner Heidi Ricken Provost and licensed insurance professional Gerry Ricken. My name is Mark Owens. We invite you to get more at rickenfinancial.com. You can get all the information here in the show notes. Thanks again for subscribing. Now, let's get to the show. Gerry, how's the weekend treating you?
It was really hot in St. Louis. But we got a little reprieve on Saturday night, went inside.
Yeah, you had a great event recently, a little trivia night, raising some money and raising some awareness. Tell me a little bit about it.
We love to support causes that help children with cancer, and we hosted my daughter Barbie, not Heidi, but my daughter Barbie and I hosted trivia night for Camp Rainbow on Saturday night, and it was just a lot of fun. But Heidi was not out of the fray either, because she was our head scorekeeper, so she made all the final decisions on the scores of trivia night, and Sheila was an assistant scorekeeper. So the whole family except Will was, wasn't in town. He's still living in Chicago. Sure. But the rest of us that were in town were actually participating. And Heidi's husband, Stephen, was a participant at one of the tables.
Oh, so, very good.
As a player, and came in second place. He was bummed about that. But
I understand, Gerry, this is all for charity and all for a great cause. But can Heidi be bought? Like, if she's keeping score, if I slipped her a 20 for Camp Rainbow, do you think that would bump up my chances just a little bit?
It would take a lot more than a 20.
She got expensive.
It's all for the kids, Mark. It's all for the kids. So
good call on that.
It's all for the kids. But no, she took her job very, very seriously, which we do. We take our jobs very seriously. We don't take ourselves very seriously. She took her job as the head scorekeeper very, very seriously, and she made judgment calls, and people were pleased because she's a very direct communicator and wants to be fair, and she was fair. At the end of the night, everybody had fun, and we raised some money for charity, raised some money to help send those kids to camp. We provide free camping opportunities for children with cancer, for their siblings, for their families. We do a lot of things. We have 7 different camping programs and an 8th coming in 2026. We're rolling out a bereavement camp for families who have lost a child to cancer like ours. So we are just expanding our programming, and in fact, we've expanded into the state, in the center of the state of Missouri with our Camp In program. Our Camp In program brings camping experiences into the pediatric hospitals where kids cannot come out to camp. We bring the camp to them into the hospital. We've actually expanded that to Columbia, Missouri, or we're soon to expand it into Columbia, Missouri, in addition to the 3 pediatric centers here that serve children with cancer. So we're doing a lot of good things in the community, and it's just a lot of fun to see kids just be kids for a little bit at camp and not worry about what's happening with my sibling, what's happening with my body, what's happening with, my health, with my family, so it's just an escape for people, for kids with cancer and their siblings and their families to just have an opportunity to have some fun and just relax for a moment and not think about the daily grind of what cancer can do to a child and to a family.
It can't be understated how much time, effort, energy, and passion that you and Heidi and the entire family and a whole slew of team members and volunteers put into Camp Rainbow, helping out these families. And other than trivia night, you were telling me off the air that you got some cool events coming up over the next couple of months and into 2026.
We do have some great events. If you're a bingo player, we have a bingo night on August 15th. Then if you like jazz and participate in a little wine occasionally, the Herman Wine and Jazz Festival coming up on September 13th. And if you like golf, we're having a Topgolf Turkey Golf Tournament on November 23rd. So we have a lot of activities. If you just go to camprainbow.com, look at our How to Help section, you'll find the events there. And we'd love to see you at one of those because, as Heidi said, if you don't know us, you're just a friend we haven't met yet.
That's right. And if you want to get to know the team or get more about Camp Rainbow, we invite you to check out the website. It's rickenfinancial.com, RICKEN, rickenfinancial.com. And of course, from the homepage, you can meet the entire team at Ricken Financial. Hey, Gerry, let's get into it here this weekend because let's talk about just that, planning for the unknowns in life, and especially for the families that you serve and adults to and through retirement. One of the big unknowns is going to be our health care. going to be our medical needs, because I think I saw a statistic once that said 80% of us at some point in our life are going to require some serious medical attention. As we prepare for the long-term care and the health care, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you find for adults to and through retirement?
Well, probably one of the biggest misconceptions, Mark, is you just mentioned a statistic, 80%. What I've heard is 70% of us will at least need one day of long-term care in our lifetime.
Right.
One of the biggest misconceptions is that's going to happen to someone else. We all tend to feel like we're invincible. We really do. And we meet with a lot of people and have this discussion, and they say, well, I've been healthy my entire life. I've never had those issues in my family, but that isn't to say that they won't occur, because statistics tell us that they will occur. And if you're not one of those 7 out of 10 that needs care, you'll be 1 out of the 3 out of 10 that will be providing the care to a loved one. So long-term care issues do affect us. They affect every one of us in our lifetimes. And a lot of the misconceptions think, well, you know what? I have enough. I don't really need, I don't need long-term care coverage.
Yeah.
And when we look at it, but people say that without knowing what long-term care coverage can look like today in today's environment. And today's environment has greatly changed from the previous generation, the greatest generation before us. They had different policies and different plans you could put into place that don't exist today. And when you look at it, some people say, well, you know what? I can't afford long-term care coverage. And the answer is really, you can't afford not to look at long-term care coverage, because not having a plan in place can devastate a retirement plan and can devastate your family and can cripple you financially, because you don't know what you don't know about your health. God's the only one who knows what's going to happen with us. And none of us know what's going to happen today, tomorrow. We could be hit by a stroke. We could get hit by a bus. We could have an accident. We could do any number of things can happen to us at any point in time. And you have to have a plan in place to cover yourself.
Do you find that most people either are, I don't want to be rude to say they're ignorant about it, or they just don't understand what they may need?
Most people don't understand it because you don't think about it, to think about the positives in life and not dwell on the negatives unless you're an Eeyore. So, and we have met a few of those. But
right.
What we look at is saying people don't know what's available in help and assistance. There are all kinds of different things that you can do out there to help guide and preserve your retirement plan, not just your assets, but your whole life. And what I'm talking about is, we met with an individual, and he had worked his entire career in a manufacturing plant and had a pension and had a 401k and retired. And he and his wife were going on they always wanted to travel, and they never really traveled while they were alive, or while they were working, excuse me. But they wanted to travel, and they really wanted to go to the Northeast during the fall and see all the foliage. And they were planning this trip, and it was the summertime after he had retired. And he had retired in the 2007, 2008 time period. And we met him at about 2011. And we said, what are you doing? He said, well, I was retired, but now I'm back to work. Well, he told us a story that as they were playing, he said, I can't wait to get this whole vacation scheduled. And all of a sudden, he didn't hear his wife respond. He heard her collapse on the floor. She'd had a stroke. Everything went completely south for them, because that was an unforeseen, unknown thing that was ever going to happen, because she was in perfectly good health.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, she had a stroke and she couldn't function. So his whole life was making sure she was back to whatever the new normal was for them. And at the same time, he had retired. Their expenses were mounting up, and they were using funds out of his 401k for this and that, and all the activities that they needed to support. And he wasn't paying attention to what was happening in the markets back then. And as we know, that was our financial crisis in America. And his 401k, he lost 62% in it while he was using money out of it. And he had to go back to work.
Yeah.
So, and then he had to go back to work, and then he had to have someone there full time with his wife for a while until she could be, functioning in a wheelchair. And unfortunately, their whole life as they knew it, as they had planned it, as they had forecasted, went to shambles. It was completely in shambles because an emergency that happened that they weren't prepared for.
That's why it's so important to have that plan. And the team at Ricken Financial, they want to sit down with you and begin customizing that plan. 314-2 888-207-6211. Planning for the unknowns in life to and through retirement with Heidi, Gerry, and the team at Ricken Financial. Gerry, we were talking about planning for the unknowns in life, especially when it comes to our health care and long-term care. And you mentioned something about the importance of the power of attorney. Tell me a little bit more about that.
For those of you who don't know what a power of attorney is, it is a document, a legal document that says if I am incapacitated or if I can't perform some duties, that someone can step in and perform those duties for me. And there's a financial power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney. People say, well, I only need those if I'm an older person, but that's not necessarily the case. We had a client who was telling us a story. His niece was at Miami of Ohio, in Oxford, Ohio, going to college. And his brother lived in Chicago at the time. And she was supposed to call Dad on a Friday night, didn't call. So he called her, left her a message. She didn't call back. He left her another message. She didn't call back. It was early on in her freshman year, so he didn't know any of her friends' phone numbers. So he started getting a little panicked after several hours of not hearing from his daughter and not having any correspondence from her. So he started calling around, and he called around. He actually called the local hospital in Oxford, Ohio, and they said, yes, she's a patient here. But they couldn't give him any information because she was over 18 years old, and that would violate HIPAA rules and laws. So he did not have a health care power of attorney for his adult daughter. So he frantically got in the car, drove to Oxford, Ohio, thinking the worst, didn't know what was happening. And when he got there, he got into the hospital room early in the morning, in the wee hours of the morning. She woke up and said, Dad, what are you doing here? He said, well, I'm worried about you. And she had appendicitis. So she had an appendectomy, an emergency appendectomy, and none of her friends knew where she went that night either. So they were actually looking for her as well. But those are the kinds of things that can be avoided. He could have had that information given to him over the phone had he had a power of attorney for health care for his daughter. So powers of attorney are very, very important documents for you to have in the event that, we had a client who his wife had a stroke, and she knew everything about all their finances, all their passwords. He knew nothing about anything. He didn't know how to pay a bill. He was completely crippled because she could no longer communicate. So he had to recreate everything from scratch. There are just instances after instances after instances that you need to prepare for. And it's a very, very simple document to prepare. In fact, if you'd like those complimentary, we provide those two documents complimentary to people. If you saved $500,000 or over for your retirement planning life, we'd love to hear from you because we will provide those documents to you free of charge if you call 314-207-6211.
When you mentioned a little bit earlier, Gerry, about a lot of people are just worried because they're not 100% sure how they're going to pay for long-term care, or if they do have a speed bump in life, how they're going to cover those costs. So what are some of the options so that we're not scrambling and dipping into our retirement savings if and when something like this happens?
Well, first and foremost, Mark, what we do is we look at everything in its entirety. The first, let's back up for just a second. The first thing we want to know is if you needed long-term care in your life, how would you like to be cared for? Would you like to be cared for at home? Would you like to go to a facility? What kind of facility would you like to go to? All those things. We want you to think about that. And most people who come to us have never thought about that because they're early in their retirement. Maybe they're not retired. They're still working. You just don't think about those things that are in the future, perhaps in the future for you. So we want you to think about that first and foremost. Then we come up with options. We look at everything and say, what is your income? What are your income? What's your expenses? What are your assets? How can we generate more income? Then we look at saying, okay, what's the most effective and efficient way from a tax perspective and from an after-tax perspective to fund long-term care if you need that? And one of the options is to actually buy life insurance. And when people think about life insurance, you think about one thing. You think about death because you buy life insurance for death benefit. But the insurance companies have gotten very creative in their life insurance designs. And they now have the ability for policy owners to spend down their death benefit to pay for long-term care expenses while they're living. And this is a unique concept because, the long-term care plans of old were such that if you didn't, you paid and paid and paid for the long-term care insurance. And if you didn't use that insurance, You didn't get a benefit from it.
Yeah.
You paid for Joe down the street's long-term care is what you did. You paid for other policy owners' long-term care. The insurance companies have said, okay, why don't we work on a concept where we keep the money in the family? A lot of people didn't like those plans because if you didn't like it, if you didn't use it, you lost it. You just paid for a benefit that you didn't have. It was a comfort knowing you had it. But now, if you have an asset-based or a life insurance-based long-term care benefit plan, you can keep the money in the family, because if you don't use your long-term care benefits while you're alive, your death benefit will go to your beneficiaries. So the money you put into this plan will come back to your family and stay in your family, which I think is a very, very powerful concept, because at the same time you are providing for the unexpected, the long-term care costs that you're going to have, you're providing for that. But if you're blessed, and I say truly blessed, by not having to do that, the money doesn't go someplace else. It stays right with your children and your beneficiaries.
How many people don't know that, Gerry, that if you don't use it, that it still stays with the family?
To a person, Mark, everyone that we've shown that plan to, it was a surprise to them that even existed. So education is key. And that's what we pride ourselves on, is educating the public. We do that through public seminars. We do that through our meetings when we meet with people. We want to make sure that you are informed and that you have all the tools available at your disposal to make informed, intelligent, and wise decisions for your retirement life, whether that is in investing, whether that is in your life insurance needs for long-term care, whatever it is. We want to make sure that you have every bit of information that we can provide you to make informed, intelligent, and good decisions for you and your family.
My grandfather drove an old beat-up Ford for 100 years and had it out on his farm. He had a gun rack on the back. He always had a shotgun on it. I remember one day I was a kid, and I said, Papa, I said, why do you keep a gun back here? There's no bears out here. Remember, I was like 6 years old. Well, why do you keep a gun out here? He goes, Mark, better to have it, not need it, than need it, not have it.
So true. Yeah. So true.
Yeah. I think that insurance, that conversation we just had, kind of the same way. Better to have it, not need it, than need it and not have it.
And I will tell you, Mark, the people who wait and delay and delay and delay, then call us and say, hey, can we talk about long-term care?
Yeah.
Because something happened. Because my wife is had a stroke, because I'm not remembering things. At that point in time, it's too late.
Yep.
Planning up front and planning when you're younger is going to be less expensive, and you'll get better coverage.
Insurance products are offered through the insurance business Ricken Financial LLC. Ricken Financial LLC is also an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through Impact Partnership Wealth LLC, a registered investment advisor. IPW does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by Ricken Financial LLC are not subject to investment advisor requirements. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. Ricken Financial LLC is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during the show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Ricken Financial LLC.
Please remember that converting an employer plan account to a Roth IRA is a taxable event. Increased taxable income from the Roth IRA conversion may have several consequences. Be sure to consult with a qualified tax advisor before making any decisions regarding your IRA.
Tax preparation and tax advisory services are offered through Ricken Financial. These services are not offered by IPW and are not subject to investment advisor requirements. These services referenced are an outside business activity not offered through or supervised by IPW.